The floorboard creaked softly beneath him. For a moment, the only sound in the house was the mechanical hum of the aging heating system. Outside, a light wind stirred the bare branches of the oak tree, scraping against the bedroom window. Otherwise, it was still. He checked his phone. 12:30 a.m., February 11th, 2024. It wasn't unusual for Nathan O'Connor to be woken by a call this late. His wife, Catherine, stirred beside him, and he pressed a kiss to her hair. She mumbled something unintelligible and turned away, pulling the blanket over her head. He got out of bed, careful not to disturb her, and walked to the kitchen to get a glass of water. The phone was still pressed against his ear. O'Connor here. His voice was clipped. There was no time to waste. He didn't know what it was yet, but something was wrong. Very wrong. After a brief pause, he said, "All right, I'm on my way." He hung up and poured the water into the sink, splashing some onto his face. Catherine stirred again, sitting up in bed. "Everything all right?" she asked, her eyes bleary with sleep. He turned off the tap and dried his hands on a tea towel. "Just a call at work," he said, trying to keep his voice even. "Nothing to worry about." He knew he sounded unconvincing. Catherine didn't reply, but he could hear her watching him. He kissed her temple and went out the front door. As he climbed into his cruiser, she called after him, "Be careful," her voice tight with worry. He waved and started the engine. There was a moment as he pulled away from the curb where the silence seemed almost deafening. Then the whine of tires on tarmac filled his ears, and he was enveloped in the familiar darkness of another lonely night shift. It took him 15 minutes to reach Clearwater Ravine, a secluded spot just beyond the city limits. When he arrived, 2 officers were already there, their floodlights cutting through the thick dark. They looked up as he approached, and Nathan could see that their faces were pale, their expressions strained. "You need to see this for yourself, sir," one of them said quietly. Nathan nodded. There was a hollowness in his gut that had nothing to do with the emptiness of the road behind him. They led him to a hollowed-out patch of frozen ground, a pickup truck parked precariously on the edge. The engine was still warm, and steam rose from the hood, mingling with the mist hanging low over the ravine. Nathan could feel the damp seeping up through the cracks in the pavement and around his boots. The air was still heavy. "We got called in by a hunter," the officer said, nodding toward the woods behind them. "Said he saw the vehicle from a ridge overlooking the road. Thought it was strange, because, well, this road is pretty desolate this time of night." One of the officers shone his flashlight into the truck. Blood smeared the inside windshield. Nathan leaned closer, peering into the darkness. Through the driver's side window, he could see blood-spattered upholstery and something lying on the floor. Something small. Nathan stepped back, his gaze sweeping over the ravine, settling on the dark woods behind the truck. There were drag marks leading away from the vehicle, disappearing into the trees. "Get the tracker and the photographer over here," he said, his voice tight, "and dispatch, run the plates on the truck. See who it's registered to." The first officer was already on the radio as the second moved to follow Nathan into the woods. "Sir, maybe we should wait for backup," the younger officer said, falling into step beside him. "Yeah, me too," Nathan replied, though his eyes were fixed ahead. There was something about the scene that set his teeth on edge. The forest itself seemed to press in on them, the branches' skeletal fingers clawing at the fading light. Suddenly, the officer with him stopped and held up a hand. "What is it?" Nathan asked, his eyes searching the darkness. The other man bent down, brushing snow aside with his foot. "Look," he said, pointing to the ground. Nathan leaned down and saw something glinting in the dim light, a small silver locket half buried in the snow. It was ornate, crafted with intertwining vines and leaves. And when Nathan brushed away the remaining snow, he saw that there was a photo tucked inside. He picked it up, holding it gingerly between his thumb and forefinger. The photo was of a young girl, no older than 8 or 9, with bright eyes and a wide smile. Her red hair spilled over the edges of the picture, framing a face that Nathan felt he knew, a face that sent a chill down his spine. He turned to the other officer. "How long has this thing been here?" he asked. "Since last night," the officer replied. That was the hunter. He said he recognized the girl from the missing persons posters. Said he thought it was strange to see her picture in a locket like that. Nathan stared at the woods. He felt a prickle at the back of his neck. Something about this scene was wrong. So wrong, he suddenly turned and ran back to his cruiser. He needed to get on the radio, contact dispatch. The case was cold. It had been dead for months. But somehow here it was in front of him, breathing down his neck. He fumbled for his radio, his fingers clumsy and slow. Dispatch, it's O'Connor. Yeah, I need you to run a check on that truck for me. See whose name it's registered to, and also put out on all units. We've got a possible deceased person here. Yeah, send someone over right away." Nathan turned and started back to the woods. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to get out of there, but he didn't. Instead, he pushed forward, stepping over fallen branches, his eyes scanning the darkness. As he did, he heard a snap. Something shifted in the trees ahead, and he froze. The sound of breaking twigs came again, closer this time. Nathan raised his gun, his finger tightening on the trigger. Whatever was out there, it was big. Static hissed in his ear, and a voice cut through, garbled and whispery. "You shouldn't be here." The voice sent a fresh wave of adrenaline surging through him, heart hammering against his ribs. Then silence. He slowly lowered his gun. "Hello," he said, his voice tight. "Is anyone there?" No reply. He continued on, pushing aside branches, his eyes searching the darkness. The forest seemed to press in around him, suffocating him, its shadows twisting and turning into monstrous shapes. The air grew colder, sending goosebumps rising across his skin. Then he saw it. A tree ahead with bark peeled back in long claw-like gouges. The sight made his blood run cold. He could have sworn he saw a skeletal outline dart behind a tree, a fleeting glimpse of something that was definitely not human. His breath hitched. He blinked, his eyes scanning, his pulse racing. But there was no movement, just the oppressive quiet. He stumbled back toward the lights, his legs suddenly weak. He fumbled for his radio. Dispatch, I need backup here ASAP. Possible deceased person. Repeat, possible deceased person. Send everything you've got." He turned and ran, not daring to look back. He could hear the crunch of his own footsteps on the frozen ground, each snap of a twig sending a jolt of fear through him. The darkness ahead seemed to be beckoning, promising oblivion. He burst through the trees and onto the road, gasping for breath. He could hear the distant wail of sirens. Help was on the way. He slumped against his cruiser, sliding to the ground. As he looked back at the woods, he saw something move fast. Too fast. Something glinted in the twilight, a small silver locket lying in the dirt. He crawled toward it, his fingers trembling as he picked it up. It was the same locket as before, except this time the clasp was cracked open, revealing an empty space where a photo had been. Nathan felt a surge of panic. What had been here? What had taken the girl? He stood and staggered back to the road, calling for backup as he went. He found another locket, this one cracked open, no photo, no explanation. When he returned to the site with the others, the truck was gone, the officers too. All he saw were tire tracks ending in nothing. As he drove home, he could feel Catherine's worried gaze upon him, even from a block away. He knew he should tell her what had happened, but he didn't. He simply parked the car and shut off the engine. "Everything all right?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. He stepped out of the car and wrapped her in a tight hug. Just a false alarm, he murmured into her ear. Nothing to worry about. That night, he placed both lockets in a drawer, the one with the picture, the one without. But when he checked later, there were 3. He slipped the new addition into the drawer, a sense of unease settling over him. In the morning, when he went out to his truck, he found a single clawed handprint pressed against his windshield. And as he drove to work, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched.